All right, well, it's 3 p.m. Eastern, so let's go ahead and get started. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming on. This is the Travel Search Brand Strategies for Vacation Rental Teams webinar, Orlando region. My name is Luke, co-founder over at Extenteam. I'm also joined with Ari, also co-founder at Extenteam. Hey, Ari, Dennis Goedheid, founder, CEO over at Casiola, and we have Arthur Colker, founder and CEO over at StayFi. So welcome everybody. Excited to get this very exciting conversation kicked off here. So we're going to do things a little bit differently. Obviously this conversation has been going on for quite some time now, the rise of vacation rental. The vacation rental category has been on the rise all through the pandemic era. Now things are really starting to shift as we're seeing travel demand explode through what by many accounts could be a very big year for travel, if not the biggest. And today we're going to take a regional approach and focus on the Orlando region to understand what it really takes to build out a competitive vacation rental management platform and brand in the context of what we're seeing from both the demand side, but also in terms of the supply side, in terms of the workforce labor crunch that is happening right now, because ultimately brand really depends on delivering what we promise, right? And this is a huge part of the equation. So we're going to kick it off. I'm going to present some data from our latest state of the hospitality workforce report. And then we're going to hear from Dennis over at Casiola, give us his ground view perspective on what's happening in the Orlando region. And then we will talk to Arthur, get Arthur into the conversation to give us his input on the direct marketing side of the equation, how that fits into today's context. And then of course, at any time, please feel free to use the question board to ask your questions and to get involved in the conversation. So we look forward to that. Let's go ahead. I'm going to start and share my screen here, and we're going to go over some of the latest insights and data that's coming out of this, what's really an ongoing research initiative. Can everybody see my slides?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Which is the U.S. Accommodations State of the Workforce Report, which we update on a monthly basis. And again, this is a critical part of the puzzle here, right? As we look forward into this great unknown and what's going to happen as we come into this new normal, so to speak, post-pandemic. And we've been talking about the so-called, labor crunch, what we're seeing for many, many months now. We foresaw this happen, and it's really, really great, fascinating to see it all play out. And I think the first and foremost, what we have to do is really understand the immensity of the challenge and what happened ultimately here, where we saw in just a few months, from basically from February of 2020 to May of 2020, just a few months, a 48% decline in the total number of accommodations workers in the United States. And well, I mean, we all know the cause of that, and we've been slowly coming out of this hole. Basically from May of 2020 to May of 2021, the number of workers in the accommodation space increased by 48%. but we are by no means out of the woods yet in terms of return back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of total workforce. If you look at the United States, this is the most recent data, May data, we're at 31% workforce deficit, which means that 70%, we're only running at 70% capacity as a nation in terms of accommodations workers. But that is at the national level. Regionally, we're seeing states and cities playing out in a very different way, where you have, and a lot of this depends on geography. We all know what happened with the big cities and the exodus out of places like New York and Los Angeles and Chicago during the pandemic. So a lot of, how this recovery is going to play out in terms of the workforce is going to really depend on the region in which you are located and how hard demand for travel was impacted during the pandemic. Town by town, we see this play out as well. So we can get into some of the details into Orlando here. This is the latest. This is the latest May numbers. We see that Orlando is currently at 50% capacity, so 50% deficit in terms of accommodations workers, which means that we still, obviously have a lot of work cut out for us, especially as the travel comes back and the surge moves forward on the demand side. The green here, the green lines there, what we see here is growth from January until May of this month. So we're seeing, Orlando performing fairly well in terms of overall workforce recovery, seeing a 20% increase from January until May of this year. Compared to some of these other regions, in New York, for example, we're just talking about this on the webinar, before the webinar started. New York is in many ways back, but we're seeing a 70% workforce deficit on the accommodations side. So at 30% capacity, with a potential explosion in travel this summer, is really going to give a lot of operators a lot to think about, clearly, and we'll hear about some of the ways that this is impacting companies on the ground when we talk to Dennis. Our projections in terms of overall recovery for the nation, it's a lot easier to furlough and let go of workers than it is to ultimately build your teams back. And what we're seeing at the national level is that month over month jobs are increasing anywhere between 2 and 4% per month. So at that pace, we anticipate a full recovery, meaning, workforce, accommodations workforce being at the pre-pandemic level sometime in Q2 of 2022, April, May 2022. We can expect to see the numbers kind of bounce back to where they were right before the pandemic. How is this impacting wages? Well, it's impacting them from what we see. I mean, there's clearly a natural, inflation when it comes to wage growth year over year. But what we're seeing is that the pandemic has definitely accelerated that. If we compare wage growth January, April 2019, we saw basically a 0.28% growth in wages across the accommodations, all accommodations workers. From January to April 2021, we're almost at 3% increase in wages in the first basically 4 months of 2021. So it'll be really interesting to see the May and June numbers as they come. And as I said, these numbers we update on a monthly basis and send out updates via our newsletter. So please make sure to go on extenteam.com and sign up for the newsletter to get updates as they happen. Interestingly, that spike that you see in April of 2020, the 19.63, what that is basically that was right as the pandemic hit. A lot of the senior level workers stayed on to kind of, say close up shop, button down the hatches, so to speak, before the full lockdown took place. So that kind of skewed the overall average hourly earnings up a little bit as the lower wage earners, the frontline workers, were let go. But nevertheless, here we are at $19.33 per hour and climbing in terms of the average wage. It's a benchmark more than anything. Of course, there's a lot of regionality that goes into play here, and what we're seeing is that Orlando is quite competitive relative to other cities in terms of overall wage, and it'll be interesting to see Dennis's reactions to this. But in terms of the overall wages average across the frontline workers as well as supervisors at roughly $15 an hour in Orlando versus places like New York, Seattle, and some of the cities in California around and surpassing $20 an hour. So clearly a lot of regionality. But again, this is not a short-term trend, right? The wage inflation is I think it's something that's going to have a lasting impact. Clearly in the short term, a lot of this is driven by is said to be driven by the federal unemployment benefits that are now actually starting to expire. Florida pulled out of the federal assistance, the $300 a month program in June. So it'll be interesting to see, and 25 other states as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that will expedite the recovery process on the workforce side. But again, I think that this is the pandemic had a longer lasting impact on the overall worker mind shift. This quote here is from just a colleague, a friend off of Facebook. And I think it really summarizes well what people are kind of thinking about when it comes to their attitudes about work-life balance. Jackie talking about how she basically getting burnt out on the restaurant industry, is stepping away from that after many years of working in it to focus on family, kids, relationships, health, and well-being. Well, it isn't an easy choice to make, but I'm listening to my gut and rebalancing what's thrown me off whack recently. We only get one life, and nobody will make the choice for me. So I think that that's indicative of what's happening across the workforce as people kind of reconsider their options in terms of training and reskilling and potentially moving up the career ladder, so to speak. So I think that adds a little bit of context there in terms of the environment that we're operating in here. So just to summarize overall, I think we can think about impact scenarios and how this all might play out, starting with that big workforce collapse that we saw as a result of the pandemic, which is now followed by the big surge in demand as vaccination rates hit the marker and travel comes back. We're seeing the wage inflation come up, which, as history has shown us, once wages go up, they tend to stay up. and this will invariably lead to cost increases, operating cost increases across the board. Whether or not that will lead to some sort of, consolidation across the industry directly is yet to be seen, but definitely from a demand shift, supplier-led demand shift, as operators need to kind of rethink their business model to make for a more profitable business as overall costs go up. And also in terms of just availability of labor to offer that high touch hospitality experience that hotels and other types of full service accommodations providers delivered. We've seen models like the vacation rental and the apartment rental really demonstrate resilience through the pandemic, and I think that we'll continue to see a lot of favor for the model, for the short-term rental vacation home model going beyond the pandemic. So that's it for the presentation. So appreciate that. And I wanted to kick it over to Dennis to give us a little bit more of a, maybe corroborate some of these trends with what's happening at the ground level in Orlando. So Dennis, thanks again for joining us.
Yeah, all these trends that you just mentioned, they all sound very, very familiar. I think we have gone through every single step that you show there. So back in March, we had to let go all our staff. We kept a skeleton crew of 8 people on board. So before that, we were at, I think, around 32 people. So in March, we temporarily laid off everyone except for 8 people that kept on working during the lockdown to make sure that all properties were still taken care of. Then once we were able to reopen in May, I think the end of April, May, we called back almost all of those people. A few of them had moved on, of course, or relocated to other states because they couldn't afford housing here without a job and had to move back to family. But almost all of them came back. So all was good. The month was okay in Orlando, but still not great all the way up until spring break. Basically, that's when the floodgates were opened. I remember that very well because I was in our operation in Aruba. I always follow up on how many emails we were getting and how many bookings and reservations. And when I left, January was still relatively slow. And then in February, we could just not keep up with emails. We were getting 16 to 1700 emails a day. Our call center was completely overwhelmed. So at that time, we started to look for people. We could not find anyone. And it was not just us. I've been talking to so many property managers. We have had some days that we had no one even showed up for the interview. So our interview process is usually 3 steps. First one is they apply and they have to fill out an assessment. So we use predictive index to already get a good overview of what kind of person we have and if they would be a good match for the job. So that's like the first selection. Then the second part is a phone interview with Brian, and he talks about the job and tries to get a feeling about the person, if it would be a good culture fit, and if they're if they have all the qualifications for the job. And then usually the next day we try to schedule an in-person interview, and there you see that most of these people that were really willing to get the job don't even show up the next day. From the ones that did show up, then it was always a surprise to see how many would still show up on the first day, which would be a few days later. So those are things we've never seen before, made it really hard. We've had people that started and 2 days later, they said, oh, I found another job that paid better. So yeah, it has been hard, a completely new challenge. We also started to look at other options, like things that we could automate, things that we could change a little bit so they would be less labor intensive. So one of the things, for example, we did was also extending the operating hours so that we had the same people longer hours on a certain day, but working less days. For example, for our operations team, from a 5-day work week to 4-day work week, but yeah, longer hours. So we could instead of having 2 shifts per day, we could do that with 1 shift a day. One of the other options was also, yeah, Extenteam for our reservations department. It's still very hard, but we could not find any people whatsoever, and we were having, yeah, all those emails coming in. There was no way on stopping them. I myself have been working 7 days a week for months in a row, answering 300-400 emails a day, just to help them out. Our IT, our developer has been helping out, our marketing director has been helping out, answering emails. So it was really all hands on deck. The whole company was basically helping out guests. So that's also when we started looking into Extenteam and yeah, added some extra team members in the Philippines to cover our night shifts. So that has been working really great. Again, the people that we had before in the past, they had to cover as well the day shifts as the night shifts. Of course, the night shifts are less busy. So what we were able to do is bring those people in earlier during the day. So we had more people handling phone calls during the day, and then outsource the night shift to Extenteam. So that's one of the other solutions that we came up with. But it has been hard, I think, not just for us. A lot of property managers have had a hard couple of months. We always joke we made so much money in the last few months, but yeah, without the staffing, without providing the quality that you want to provide to your guests, it been fun. So finally, we're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. It's getting there a little bit more, but we're still looking for people on all operational departments.
So is that light at the end of the tunnel? Is that coming from, kind of you guys like changing the way that you do things, or is it more from the market in terms of like, more workers coming online and kind of coming back to the status quo, so to speak, pre-pandemic?
We're not seeing that part yet. I think we adapted a little bit more as a company. So when it started in February, we were just completely taken by surprise, completely overwhelmed. It was spring break, then our top booking months, and it was just everything at the same thing while we were still on COVID staffing. Now, a few months later, we found some great people. It has taken a lot longer than it usually does. They have been trained now, so they're almost running up to speed now. But also, yeah, the other changes, operational changes that we made, makes it a little bit more controllable.
Yeah. And Orlando, for those attending that are not familiar, is clearly the home of Disney. So you get a lot of international visitors coming in, and still, the international traffic is very much curtailed. So I imagine on the travel surge side of the equation, is Orlando kind of below average, or what's the, what's it look like in terms of the demand on the consumer side?
Yeah. I think if you compare us with other areas in Florida, like the Panhandle, we have definitely not been as lucky as they have been with demand. It's getting there now, but we're still not at the just think there has been a big shift in demand more towards vacation rentals. So I definitely don't complain, but if you just look overall at the market, at hotel occupancy, Orlando as a market is still a lot lower than it was pre-pandemic. Now you mentioned Disney, and that's actually also a funny, well, not really that funny, but an interesting fact. So for the people that are not familiar with Disney, they are one of the biggest employers, or probably the biggest employers in Florida. So when the pandemic hit, I think they furloughed or let go more than 40,000 workers here in Central Florida. So that's a huge people that all of a sudden were out of a job. So when we started hiring, we were actually getting a lot of people that have been working like 20, 30 years at Disney, very smart people, people that would normally never be available on the job market and that would definitely not work for a company like Casiola. And yeah, we were getting all those great people, so I really saw it as an opportunity. But then Disney was also reopening back up, and we actually lost a lot of people too. Right in that time that we saw a huge surge because Disney is also struggling to get people. So all those great people that we had, they were leaving at a time that we had a very hard time in getting other people, and yeah, such high demand. So yeah, we're grateful for the time they spent with us. But for most of them, Disney is really a career where they started 20, 30 years ago, and where they want to retire. So yeah, that was a challenge for us.
From your peers, are you hearing anything about the, how the unemployment benefits now that are being phased out might impact the overall market? I mean, I know that, obviously hospitality isn't the only sector that's been impacted, and I'm sure that, indirectly you're getting, from a guest experience perspective, whether it's, short on supplies, or, we're talking earlier about the FedEx guy not showing up for, 10 days, are, where do we go from here? How do you think this is going to play out, over the summer and into the fall for Orlando specifically?
I was definitely hoping that we would get more traction already now, and people knowing that the extra unemployment would end, that they would start looking for a job. Unfortunately, we have not really seen that yet. And I think it's going to be at least up until mid-August before we're going to see a lot of people returning to the job market. A lot of kids are out of school right now. People have money because there was stimulus. They have had the unemployment, which was sometimes higher than what they would make while they were working. So I think a lot of people are still gonna wait a few more months and spend the summer with their kids before they return to the job market. So that's at least what I hope. I hope that by September we're gonna see a lot more people showing up for job interviews than we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and just, kind of, and by the way, audience, if anybody in the audience has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A board to go ahead and chime in and ask away. But I was going to ask on the guest experience side, we said many months ago that guests are going to have to acclimate to a kind of a new standard in hospitality in terms of, longer wait times, fewer rooms available. do you think that standards are going down in Orlando? And I don't know how how that's translated into, dollars and cents for Casiola in terms of rooms available that are sitting empty because there aren't enough workers to, kind of turn the rooms.
Yeah. So unfortunately, quality is definitely down for us as a company, but probably overall, because there's just a shortage of staff and yeah, from so that's going to affect the guests as well in wait times. If you call us as in cleanness, the housekeepers have to clean more homes just because we don't have enough of them. We have seen during spring break, unfortunately, guests up at the property at check-in time at 4 p.m. And the housekeepers still had to start cleaning the property. It's not their fault because they clean probably to 4 p.m. but other people just not showing up or yeah, having more homes than housekeepers available. So it's definitely not something we are proud of, and I don't want to lower our standards, but yeah, to do all the work. So yeah, of course, guests are definitely not less demanding. So that's the balanced issue that we have here. It's a pandemic, so things like cleanliness are even more important for most guests, while we have no one that wants to do the work. So yeah, people have time to travel, they have money to travel, but there's no yeah, people that can help them.
One, just to go back a little bit to the wages and what we saw in the numbers, and wages going up overall nationally. How have you been approaching that? Is it like, increase in pay, bring you the workers that you need, or is there just like you just can't find the people? Is it like
Yeah, we have increased pay for our people. Bonuses now, especially because we need to get through the summer. So we have sign-on bonuses. Stay until mid-August. They get an extra $250 or $500. The most luck we've had so far was internal referrals from got the most people during this difficult time. But I want to be a little bit careful about increasing wages too much. It's interesting that you said usually you see a trend of it going up and never going back down. But I wanted to be careful a little bit with that because, yeah, you cannot give people a pay decrease probably,
right.
and I don't know how long this demand is going to last. We're seeing great numbers all the way up until mid-August, but after that we see a big drop-off. We are all hoping on international traffic speeding up again, but most of you know right now there's still a travel ban, so people from Europe or Brazil can still not travel to the US, and no one really knows when that ban is going to be lifted. So yeah, it's really hard to tell. I cannot say what the fall is going to be right now. We do see that we are on pace with 2019, so that's encouraging. But also the whole booking window has changed, so it's past
Right, and then just sticking with the theme of the overall. In terms of the brand part of the story here, where we have this, unique situation for vacation rental teams. We have the surge in demand, giving a lot of leverage to operators on the demand side, but then also this crunch in terms of labor and being able to deliver on the brand promise, so to speak. I thought, Arthur, I know that, I mean, ultimately your product, right? Your StayFi is very much a direct marketing product or direct marketing strategic product. What do you think about all this and how where we kind of move forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the last 9 months, we've really seen, like, since our product is both operational in managing Wi-Fi networks remotely from the cloud and also marketing driven to collect more emails and get your brand in front of guests. And so I've seen kind of people want to use it for kind of very different reasons. And I think more related to this conversation, simplifying the kind of Wi-Fi on process for guests around getting online, reducing the number of questions that people are getting to their internal team, as well as getting more of the information about homes in front of guests to reduce questions that they're getting from them. So there's been some desire to use the ability to manage networks to make sure that they're running at all times, to get guests redirected to guest books or digital guides after they log into the Wi-Fi. All of that has become, I'd say, more important recently. That demand has picked up and there's less emphasis or less need right now for more direct bookings, because most of the people we work with, I'd say they're pretty much at full capacity right now. So more emphasis on the operational side. I'd say right after the lockdown happened and Airbnb and Vrbo changed cancellation policies, then there was a bigger surge in interest in direct bookings and creating more independence from the OTAs. And I think that feeling is still around. So people right now want to take advantage of capturing this huge surge of demand that they're getting in their properties, capturing phone numbers, emails, names from everybody staying in the property, not just the booker. But I think a lot of them aren't necessarily capitalizing on information now or aggressively marketing to those lists. I think they see it more as a long-term investment to then have this pool of individuals to market to in the future when the demand situation is a little more back to normal.
Interesting. So yeah, so on the operations side of the equation and overall, guest experience, what kind of shifts have you seen, I guess, during the pandemic and, post-pandemic in terms of overall guest experience in, traditional vacation rental?
Yeah, I think Wi-Fi became more important because of just the work remote segment that grew very quickly, and people needing reliable internet wherever they are. So definitely people love how they can, at least in our product, see the status and availability of all their networks remotely so that they know if there's an outage or issue before the guest does, and can proactively message against that, which is super important. And because you also see like the whole building or individual units, you can tell if it's like a outage over in the whole area versus just a specific home. So it's easier to disentangle what's like a Comcast issue versus like what's this home's internet has been unplugged and needs to be reset. So that's definitely, I think, more interest in that, as well as alerting. So like if the internet's out or if there's too many guests in the property using the Wi-Fi, there's also been more occupancy or kind of guest quality issues as well. So people want that view of who's in the unit using the internet at any time and what the status is.
And just to echo what Arthur says, I also happen to be a founder of a property management company, and we operate some multifamily units. So we use Arthur's product at Stagia, and it really helped us like in a multifamily where we had one account through AT&T and another account through Comcast. So if one internet account goes down, like the mesh network functionality just kicked in and provided some sort of backup internet without having to switch networks for the guests. So that's one thing that we really found helpful, especially in this day and age where people are working remotely from all over the place and from their homes.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of people don't realize that when you use like the mesh system that we have, when you plug the devices into like a Comcast or AT&T or whatever router, they all form one network, and that network will leverage all the different ISP connections. So for the guest, it looks like one network for the whole building. They won't know what access point or internet service provider they're using, but as they traverse the building or go to the pool, they're still on the same network. And if one of those modems becomes unplugged, then we're just going to not have the ATT connection, but we still have a few other ISP connections to work with in that area. So multifamily users, you know, they can either save money by reducing the number of paid subscriptions or just increase the overall resiliency of the network in the building. And our multifamily operators definitely went under a lot of stress because they're mostly in urban markets. So any cost savings we could help them achieve by reducing the number of paid subscriptions was also very valuable for them, because a lot of them were master leasing those particular units, which was an issue when you stop getting bookings for a few months. So, you know, any support that we offered there is definitely helpful for folks doing multifamily.
Interesting. In the way of guest experience, kind of working, you know, doing more with less in this environment. Dennis, have you seen or have you like initiated any sort of automation, you know, beyond what's already automated in terms of, you know, keyless entry and all that stuff, maybe stepping up, you know, the pace on all that? Do you think there's still room for like more, you know, technology as a result of the operating environment that we find ourselves in now?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's maybe one of the good things that came out of this, because I have been in guest relations, complete. I always follow up a little bit, but now I've been doing it every single day for months. So you hear those questions from guests, you see what they're struggling with, and you want to come up with solutions to bring the number of same questions down a little bit. So we have implemented a lot of actually small tweaks, nothing spectacular, but that really helped in avoiding certain questions.
Right, absolutely. Arthur, in terms of the, we're like the pandemic is like, you know, where's it going to be, you know, in travelers' mind a month or two from now? Or do you think that we're going to see a kind of, you know, we saw longer lengths of stay, and I'm sure that probably helped out your, you know, kind of Wi-Fi business, right? People really needed secure connections because they were working out of their, vacation rental or apartment rental. Do you think that things are just kind of go back to the way they were, or do you think that there's some lasting trends there that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have a pretty good view of kind of the number of guest emails or logins we collect in aggregate has been going up a lot in the last month, which is kind of a sign of more turnover in the units. So while as before, maybe we had like a 5-bedroom home and we'd be getting like 10 emails a month because people had longer stays. Now we'll be seeing like 20 or 30 emails coming from that unit over the course of the month. So it's kind of like the per unit like email yield has been rising. So I think that's indicative of shorter term stays and more frequent, you know, higher levels of occupancy. And that's been pretty much true across the board. So for us, you know, our customers like well, we kind of see more value when we have a little higher turnover and more guests coming through the property, because that allows us to collect more information for the property manager. But of course, they don't want a bunch of super short stays either. So there's kind of a good balance there where we're kind of effectively collecting information and the property manager is getting good, decent, frequent, long stays in the unit. But definitely I see more kind of the pre-pandemic pattern of email frequency and collection than we were getting over the past maybe 6 months.
Interesting. Dennis, is that something that kind of keeps you up at night, like more, conversions, more, that's more work for you guys, right? Shorter lengths of stay.
Also more money. We make a little bit of money on each turnover. We can do upselling. We can sell early check-ins, late check-ins. So for us as a property manager, more turnovers is great if you have the staffing of that's the challenge. And we have seen the same trend as Arthur mentioned. We are almost 100% booked every single weekend. We usually, for most homes, we have a 3-night minimum stay. So Thursdays to Sundays or Mondays are the busiest now for us, and weekdays are really hard to fill. Even though we play with rates, we do dynamic pricing and revenue management, and our weekend prices are sometimes 50–60% higher than our weekday prices for Monday, Tuesday. And still, we see all those weekend bookings. So that's something we usually see a lot less with international traffic. Those people come for longer periods. They also schedule ahead more. So I think people, another thing that we also notice is that people spend a lot more time in the homes compared to the past. So in the past, if you came to Orlando, you just need a property to sleep and have breakfast in best case, and that was it. People were out all day, every day, and now they're really booking a home to use everything in the home, so the game rooms, the pool area, and so on. So people spend more time in the homes, but shorter stay.
Right. And in terms of the seasonality of the Orlando market, do things kind of taper off in the fall or winter? How does that typically play out?
For us, so after the summer vacation, usually August, September are the slowest months of the year. And we see that trend now too. And then October, it starts picking up a little bit more with conventions going on, and Halloween. They do every year the Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios, which is very popular and helps us selling out almost every weekend. They also have some snowbirds. So usually, August, September are the slowest time of the year, and then the fall is like 50–60% occupancy on a steady basis.
Right. And coming into this, kind of new travel market, right, with especially on the convention side and, decline in business travel, which sounds like it'll probably be a lasting thing. Factoring in all of those different demand, sources of inbound demand for travel, are you particularly worried about any of those? It's impossible to predict, but are you thinking how things might be a little bit different this year in terms of that mix?
Not really. We didn't have many real business travelers or solo business travelers anyway, because our properties are larger. And I think the convention market is really gonna rebound. You see, even in our industry, conventions are starting up again, and people really want to go after being stuck at home for a year. So I think one of the big good trends is that everybody now has become familiar with vacation homes. So a lot of people have tried it now during the pandemic. Airbnb has gone public, so it created a lot of buzz. So I think that's going to be a really good, long-lasting trend for our industry. One of the things to worry about is the hotel industry, of course, because they also noticed and are getting into our markets one way or another. Like Marriott already has homes and villas. I know there's some other big players doing similar things or even developing or changing the way they build hotels with multiple rooms that can connect together or building apartments. So we're gonna see some big players with a lot of capital entering this market, I think, in the next few years. But yeah, I think we're gonna have some great years ahead of us.
It's interesting on the consolidation side. Arthur, how is that going to impact your business as, you know, small get eaten up by the big or not? I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not, but it sounds like it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through the experience of some of our customers being acquired or merged in, but typically they, for the most part, don't really mess with the in-home technology because that's like, at least not initially, because that's like a big lift. Yeah, but I think for our like general perspective on promoting direct bookings, like I think some of these larger brands building more awareness around book direct, whether it's like AvantStay that we work with, or like Vacasa obviously is huge and they're super supply growth focused, but maybe in the future they're also trying to build a consumer brand. I think in general, building more awareness around management companies, professional management companies, the fact that they are the source and really the determinant of the quality of the stay is overall a good thing, because it will drive more consumers to search out for those direct brands as opposed to only thinking of short-term rentals as an Airbnb. So hopefully we see just more general industry promotion of direct booking, which obviously we're a very large supporter of, and encourage that brand building exercise that we've seen some of these larger companies starting to invest more resources in.
Dennis, is there room to grow in Orlando?
I think there's definitely a room to grow, and that's something that always intrigued me. Orlando, I think, is one of the biggest vacation rental markets in the US or maybe in the world. And you still don't see a lot of like really big players in this area. You have hundreds and hundreds of small management companies, 20, 30 homes. You've got a couple of larger ones that have 300, 400, 500 homes, and that's about it. You don't have any players with 1,000 homes or 2,000 homes. Well, there's definitely room in this market for that amount of homes. So I think there's still a lot of growth possible for us and for others in this market.
Wonderful. Fantastic.
For a strange reason, it's really hard for the big guys to get a good market share in this market, like Vacasa and others. A lot of them have tried and already pulled back out of Orlando or just still manage a very small amount of properties here.
What do you think? Why do you think that is?
I have no idea, to be honest.
It seems like
yes, I don't know why they couldn't do it here, but yeah.
Right. Seems like the market's ripe. The wages are competitive compared to other city markets. The demand is certainly there. Well, it's very interesting. Very, very wonderful conversation we have here. So I think we're going to wrap it up here with just a few, final thoughts. Just from my end, I think that I think Orlando will just continue to be very much a bellwether brand. Just takeaways from my end, just because of the international demand that has yet to hit. A lot of the the question marks around business travel and conventions, and just overall, how consumer travel has changed away from, the bigger kind of tourism destinations. Disney is still, from my understanding, underperforming. Is that correct, Dennis? Is Disney still kind of,
They're still not at the full capacity. So there's, especially now during summer and high peak areas, there's more demand than available tickets. So we had a few guests that booked their whole stay during spring break, but they did not reserve their theme park tickets already. And yeah, by the time they got here, it was completely sold out. And I know for certain ticket brackets, there's still, there's no availability anymore for the summer. So they also still have room to increase capacity, but they're dealing with the same thing. I speak with a lot of people from Disney, and they want to reopen their hotels and resorts, but they just don't have enough staffing to do that.
Right, so that's going to be the big impact. So nevertheless, lots of question marks for Orlando market, but great to hear that you are pretty much at 100% booked out for the summer, right? So
yeah, especially the weekends. Yeah,
it's great. The weekends, right? Arthur, are you going to put your best sales guy on the Orlando market now, or?
That's we're now focused globally, so wherever people want us, we'll go there. So yeah, I mean, Florida and Texas are still our largest markets. So lots of growth, especially Panhandle, Orlando, and then, like Texas Hill Country around Austin, another booming market with a ton of short-term rental activity.
That's excellent. That's a great segue. And thanks so much for those that have attended. Real pleasure. We'll be following up with a recording if you want to share with your audience. And we want to do this again. We want to do regional webinars, hopefully once a month. So if you do have any recommendations or want to get involved, please feel free to reach out to me, Luke at extenteam.com. Or visit our website, extenteam.com, just put a contact us tab. Otherwise, we really thanks so much, Dennis, Arthur, for coming on to give us your amazing insights, and we will we'll continue to keep our eye on Orlando, and yeah, let's see what happens. So thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, Luke.
Yep.
My pleasure.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thanks, Dennis.
You have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.